Hello, and welcome to this recorded sermon from the Ipswich Methodist Circuit, recorded for Remembrance Sunday. My name is Steve Mann. If you don't recognise me, I serve the churches in the southern half of this circuit. And I'm recording this in the wake of Storm Ciarán and the devastating consequences that it has left. And on Remembrance Sunday, we are reminded of far greater devastating consequences, the devastating consequences of war. And we look back, although with events in Israel and Ukraine, we can look sideways as well. But we look back, we remember, in order to learn from the past and pledge ourselves to work for all that supports peace in our present and in our future. And if I needed any reminding of the devastating consequences of war, I was reminded when in 2005 I moved as a minister to the Tunbridge Wells circuit. And there I met a lovely lady called Edie. Edie was amazing. She was in her early 90s, but she was still serving at that time as the property secretary for the circuit and doing a good job as well. Now, if you take that date of 2005, take away 90 years, you get back to 1915. And that was the last time that Edie saw her father. She was a toddler at the time. Her father enlisted in a local regiment and in October 1915 sailed to take part in the Gallipoli campaign. Now, you may already be thinking, well, that was a dreadful place, but he never even made it that far. On the night of the 28th of October 1915, their ship, a converted cross-channel liner called renamed the HMS Hythe, was waiting to disembark troops off the Turkish coast. And they had their lights extinguished so as to avoid attention from the enemy guns. Now, of course, when you've extinguished your lights, it's difficult for anyone to see you, friend or foe. And the HMS Hythe was rammed by another troop ship that had disembarked and was speeding away. And in 10 minutes it sank, with half of the soldiers on board drowned, including Edie's father. One story handed down is that in one street in that local area, the postman had so many telegrams, so many messages of bad news to deliver that he had to abandon his round halfway through and return to the depot. So overwhelmed was he. It reminds us, if we need any reminding, that the casualties of war aren't always on the battlefield. In fact, only a small proportion of them are on the battlefield. They're not even killed by enemy fire all of the time. But there's a far greater quantity of casualties of war who are left behind. The partners, the parents who will receive those messages of bad news. The children who will grow up without a parent. Maybe like Edie, with no clear idea of what their father or mother looked like. And then there are those who, when their loved one went away, were engaged and never made it to the altar. Oh, how we long for that time, described by the prophet Isaiah, when God will destroy the pain of death, when God will wipe away the tears from every eye. It's a vision taken up again in the book of Revelation. But this time it's pictured in the language of marriage and separation. John, the writer of Revelation, sees the wedding of Jesus with his bride, the church. Death has not been able to stop it. Not his death, not our deaths. Nothing will be able to stop it. That wedding, that eternal union, is what Jesus promised in our Gospel reading. Now, the timeline for marriage in Jesus' day went something like this. The prospective bridegroom and his father would travel and visit the family of the prospective bride, and they would negotiate, and they would come to an agreement, and when that agreement was reached, then the couple would become betrothed. And then the bridegroom and his father would return to their house, and there'd be no contact between bride and groom for a period of months. During that time, the groom and presumably other family members would be working to extend the house, to build living quarters for the groom and his new bride on the side of the house. And then when all of that was ready and a suitable amount of time had passed, the groom would return, often without warning. That was part of the fun of it, and hence Jesus' parable about the 10 bridesmaids, the 5 wise ones and the 5 foolish ones with the oil in their lamps. But he would return and take his bride back to her new home, back to his father's house. And there the wedding celebrations, the festivities would begin. Now, with that in mind, think again about those verses from the beginning of that 14th chapter of John's Gospel. There Jesus says to his disciples, "I am going away. I am going to my Father's house. There I will prepare a place for you. And I will return. I will return and I will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also." These are exactly the words of marriage. These are exactly the words that you might expect a bridegroom in Jesus' day to say to his bride as they say their farewells at that point of betrothal. "I'm going away. I'm going to my Father's house, but I will return and take you to be where I am." Now, in these verses from Revelation, we see the glorious fulfillment of Jesus' promise. He has returned and brought us to his Father's house. The bride is prepared and ready for the wedding festivities to begin. From now on, united with Jesus, we shall dwell in the house of God forever, where God will wipe away every tear, where there will be no more death or mourning, crying or pain. As we keep a period of silence, we look back and we remember. We remember those whose lives were ended by war, and those whose lives were never the same again. All those casualties of war. And we remember, in order to look to our present and to pledge ourselves to all that works for peace in our time. But we also look forward. We also look forward to that glorious future, when in God death, war, pain, suffering will be no more, and a new world will begin.